March 31st, 2006, Columbus, Ohio. A 27-year-old medical student named Brian Shaffer walked into a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Security cameras recorded him entering through the front door at 1:15 in the morning. Those same cameras recorded every single person who left that bar when it closed at 2 a.m. Police identified each one of them. Brian Shaffer was not among them. He never walked out. And here's what makes this case absolutely terrifying. There was only one public entrance to this bar. Two security cameras covered it completely. Police reviewed hundreds of hours of footage. They accounted for every patron, every employee, every person who entered and exited that night, except one. Brian Shaffer walked into that bar and simply ceased to exist. It's been over 18 years. No body has ever been found. No trace of him has ever been discovered. And his best friend, the last person to see him alive, refuses to talk. This is the story of one of the most baffling disappearances in American history. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case has haunted investigators for nearly 2 decades. Brian Randall Shaffer was born on February 25, 1979 in Pickerington, Ohio, a quiet suburb just outside Columbus. He wasn't just any student. Brian was exceptional. Tall, athletic, charismatic. In high school, he was captain of the tennis team, and people genuinely thought he had the talent to go professional. But Brian had other plans. After graduating in 1997, he enrolled at Ohio State University, where he spent the next 6 years earning a degree in microbiology. Then, in 2004, he was accepted into the Ohio State University College of Medicine. His dream? To become a doctor. But if you asked Brian what he really wanted, he'd tell you something completely different. Brian loved music. He played guitar. He had a Pearl Jam logo tattooed on his arm. He dreamed of living on a tropical island somewhere, maybe starting a band, living the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle. Sun, sand, and music. That was Brian's real dream, but for now, he was a dedicated medical student working toward a future that would make his parents proud. And his parents were incredibly proud of him. Randy and Renee Shaffer had raised 2 sons, Brian and Derek, his younger brother. They were a close-knit family, the kind that dinner together, the kind that supported each other through everything. But in March of 2006, tragedy struck the Shaffer family. Renee, Brian's mother, passed away from myelodysplasia, a rare and aggressive form of bone cancer. Brian's friends later said that even though he seems to be handling it well on the surface, her death absolutely devastated him. He just lost his mother. He was drowning in the pressure of medical school. Final exams were approaching. And emotionally, Brian was barely holding it together. But there was one bright spot in his life. Her name was Alexis Wagoner. Alexis was also a second-year medical student at Ohio State. She and Brian had started dating earlier that year, and by all accounts, they were deeply in love. Friends and family believed that Brian was planning to propose to her. In fact, Brian had already made plans for the two of them to take a trip to Miami on Monday, April 3, 2006. It was supposed to be a spring break getaway, a chance to relax, to heal, to escape the stress of medical school and the grief of losing his mother. The trip had actually been a Christmas gift from Renee before she passed away. Brian was excited about it. He'd told everyone. He'd even bought tickets to see Pearl Jam perform later that spring. Everything was looking up. He just had to get through one more night. Friday, March 31st, 2006, the last day of classes before spring break. Brian and Alexis both finished their final exams that afternoon. Alexis made plans to drive to Toledo to visit her family for the weekend before meeting Brian on Monday for their Miami trip. That evening, Brian met his father, Randy, at an Outback Steakhouse for dinner. Randy was still grieving the loss of his wife. It had only been 3 weeks since Renee's passing. Father and son sat together, talking, trying to support each other through their shared pain. Randy later told police that Brian seemed exhausted. He'd been pulling all-nighters studying for his exams. His eyes looked tired, but his spirits seemed good. After dinner, Brian told his father he was planning to go out with his friend Clint Florence for a few drinks just to blow off some steam after finals. Randy didn't think it was a great idea given how exhausted Brian looked, but he didn't say anything. He let his son go. That was the last time Randy Shaffer would ever see his son alive. At around 9:30 p.m., Brian met up with his former roommate and close friend, William Florence, better known as Clint. The two of them headed to a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona, located on the second floor of a building in Columbus's South Campus Gateway area on High Street. The Ugly Tuna was a popular college bar. Loud music, cheap drinks, packed with Ohio State students celebrating the start of spring break. Around 10 p.m., Brian called Alexis. He told her he loved her. He confirmed their Monday flight to Miami. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. After that call, Brian and Clint left the Ugly Tuna and started what they called bar hopping. They walked up and down High Street, stopping at multiple bars. At each stop, they'd take a shot of liquor and then move on to the next place. Just two friends having fun, celebrating the end of a stressful semester. Just after midnight, they ran into Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint's. She offered to give them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, where they'd started the night. So the three of them, Brian, Clint, and Meredith, returned to the Ugly Tuna around 1:15 in the morning. Security cameras captured all three of them entering the bar via the escalator. This is important, so pay close attention. The Ugly Tuna Saloona was on the second floor. The only public entrance was via an escalator from the ground level. Two security cameras covered it completely. One at the bottom of the escalator, one at the top. There was no way to enter or exit that bar without being captured on camera. Police later confirmed this fact. No blind spots, no gaps in coverage. If you went in, the camera saw you. If you came out, the camera saw you. At 1:55 a.m., one of those security cameras captured Brian Shaffer standing near the entrance of the bar. He was talking to two young women. The conversation seemed friendly, casual. After a brief chat, Brian said goodbye to them. Then he turned around and walked back toward the interior of the bar, moving out of the camera's view. That was the last time anyone ever saw Brian Shaffer. 5 minutes later, at 2 a.m., the bar closed. Lights came on, music stopped. Employees started ushering people out. Clint and Meredith looked around for Brian but couldn't find him. They tried calling his phone, no answer. They sent text messages, no response. The last signal from Brian's phone was at 2:10 a.m. when it received Clint's text asking where he was. Clint and Meredith assumed Brian had gotten tired and just gone home without telling them. It wouldn't have been unusual. Brian sometimes wandered off after a few drinks. So they left the bar and went their separate ways. No big deal, right? Wrong. On Saturday and Sunday, Alexis tried calling Brian multiple times. No answer. His father Randy tried calling him, straight to voicemail. Then Monday morning arrived, April 3rd, the day Brian and Alexis were supposed to fly to Miami together. Brian never showed up at the airport. Alexis called him over and over. Nothing. That's when she called Randy. That's when they both knew something was terribly wrong. On Monday afternoon, Randy Shaffer reported his son missing to the Columbus Police Department. And that's when this case became one of the most disturbing mysteries in American history. Columbus police immediately launched an investigation. They started at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, the last place Brian was seen. Because of rising crime in the area, the bar and surrounding businesses had installed extensive security camera systems. This should have made the investigation easy. Find Brian on the cameras, see where he went. Case closed. But that's not what happened. Investigators obtained all the security footage from the night of March 31st and the early morning of April 1st. They sat in a room and watched hundreds of hours of video. They created a timeline. At 1:15 a.m., the cameras show Brian, Clint, and Meredith entering the bar via the escalator. At 1:55 a.m., cameras show Brian talking to two women near the entrance, then walking back into the bar. At 2 a.m., the bar closes. Over the next 20 minutes, the cameras record dozens of people leaving via the escalator. Police painstakingly identified every single person who left that bar. Every patron, every employee, every bouncer, everyone.
except Brian Shaffer. He simply was not there. Detective Andre Edwards, one of the lead investigators, later stated that he could say with 100% certainty that Brian Shaffer did not leave via the escalator. The cameras didn't miss him, he just didn't leave. But that's impossible, right? There had to be another way out. Police considered every possibility. There was a service door that led to a construction area. The building was relatively new and parts of it were still unfinished. Could Brian have left through there? Investigators searched the construction zone thoroughly. No evidence, no signs that Brian had been there. Plus, to get to that service door, Brian would have had to navigate through restricted areas while intoxicated, in the dark, without being seen by any staff members. And even if he did make it through the construction zone, there was another problem. A business across the street had a security camera pointed at the ground level exit where someone coming from that construction area would emerge. Police reviewed that footage too. No sign of Brian. Okay, so what about disguise? Could Brian have changed clothes or put on a hat to avoid being recognized on camera? Investigators considered this theory extensively. Detective Edwards specifically addressed it. After reviewing all the footage, he concluded it was impossible. Why? Because police identified every single person leaving that bar by matching them to people who had entered earlier. If someone left wearing different clothes than they wore coming in, police would have noticed an unaccounted-for person leaving. They didn't. Everyone who left could be matched to someone who entered. Every single person. So if Brian changed clothes and left, then whose identity did he take? It doesn't make sense. Here's where it gets even stranger. About 50 police officers searched the area around the bar in the days following Brian's disappearance. They searched the building, top to bottom. They checked every storage room, every closet, every corner of that construction zone. They searched dumpsters, they checked the sewers, they even searched the rooftops of nearby buildings. Nothing. Not a single trace of Brian Shaffer. His car was still parked at his apartment, his credit cards were never used, his bank account was never touched, his phone never made another call. It's like he just evaporated into thin air. But people don't just vanish. There has to be an explanation. And this is where the case takes a very dark turn. Police began interviewing everyone who had been with Brian that night. His father, Randy, agreed to take a polygraph test. He passed. Meredith Reed agreed to take a polygraph test. She passed. Alexis Wagoner, Brian's girlfriend, agreed to take a polygraph test. She passed. Everyone cooperated fully with the investigation. Everyone except one person, Clint Florence, Brian's best friend, the last person to see him alive. Clint initially cooperated with police. He answered their questions, he provided his account of the evening, but then, within days of Brian's disappearance, Clint hired a lawyer, and his lawyer advised him not to take a polygraph test. Clint refused. More than that, Clint stopped talking to Brian's family altogether. Brian's brother Derek later said that as soon as police got seriously involved, Clint completely shut down communication with everyone who knew Brian. He wouldn't answer phone calls, he wouldn't respond to messages, he just went silent. Now, to be fair, hiring a lawyer is not an admission of guilt. Refusing a polygraph is not a crime. Many legal experts would say Clint did the smart thing by protecting himself. But put yourself in the family's shoes. Your son, your brother, your boyfriend has vanished without a trace. Everyone is taking polygraphs, everyone is trying to help, except the last person who saw him alive, the person who spent the entire evening with him. That person lawyers up and refuses to talk. How would you feel? What would you think? Brian's brother Derek publicly stated that he believes Clint knows something. He's not accusing Clint of foul play necessarily, but Derek is convinced that Clint is withholding information, something he knows but won't share. Tom Wagner, Alexis's father, went even further. In 2006, he made a statement to investigators saying, and I quote, "The road to making any progress on the case of Brian Shaffer leads through Clint Florence." What did he know? What made him say that? We don't have answers to those questions. But there's more. Police later revealed that Clint had admitted to them that he and Brian had a verbal altercation that night, an argument. But Clint never revealed what the argument was about. Why were they fighting? Was it serious? Did it escalate? We don't know because Clint won't say. And here's something even more suspicious. That same night, Clint was house-sitting for an Ohio State professor. Police found this odd enough that they actually searched the professor's house and the 3 cars on the property. They treated it like a potential crime scene. Nothing was found, but the fact that police considered it suspicious tells you something. Multiple OSU professors have since stated that house-sitting arrangements between professors and students are highly unusual and somewhat inappropriate. So why was Clint house-sitting that night? And why did police think it was significant enough to search? Again, we don't have answers. Clint's lawyer, Neil Rosenberg, eventually sent an email to a private investigator working on the case. In that email, dated September 2008, Rosenberg wrote something shocking. He said, and again I quote, "If Brian is alive, which is what I'm led to believe after speaking with the detective involved, then it is Brian and not Clint who is causing his family pain and hardship. Brian should come forward and end this." Think about that for a moment. Clint's lawyer is basically saying that detectives told him they believe Brian is alive and disappeared voluntarily. Is that true? Did detectives really tell him that? Or is that just a legal tactic to shift blame away from Clint? We don't know. But if detectives believed Brian disappeared voluntarily, why did they continue investigating it as a missing person case for years? Why did they search the professor's house like it was a crime scene? None of it adds up. In a 2009 phone interview, Clint Florence told a reporter that any and all questions, and he specifically capitalized those words, any and all questions about Brian's case should be directed to his attorney. He has maintained that stance for over 18 years. He has never spoken publicly about what happened that night. He has never explained the argument. He has never taken a polygraph. And to this day, Clint Florence, who now has a successful career working as a program officer at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, refuses to discuss Brian Shaffer's disappearance. But let's talk about something even more disturbing. About 5 months after Brian disappeared, something strange happened. Alexis Wagner had been calling Brian's phone every single night since he vanished. Usually it went straight to voicemail. The battery had presumably died days after his disappearance. But one night in September 2006, Alexis called Brian's number like she always did, and this time it rang. Not voicemail, it actually rang. 3 times. Alexis's heart must have stopped. She later wrote on her MySpace page, "I kept calling just to hear it ring because it was one of the best sounds I've ever heard, even though no one answered." But here's what makes this even more chilling. When police investigated, they found that Brian's phone had pinged a cell tower in Hilliard, Ohio. That's about 14 miles northwest of Columbus. His phone was active. His phone was moving. Someone had Brian's phone. Brian's wireless provider, Singular, later suggested it might have been a computer glitch. But was it? Or was someone out there 14 miles away holding Brian's phone? And if so, who? And why didn't they answer when Alexis called? This single incident has fueled speculation for years. Some people think it's proof Brian is alive somewhere. Others think someone found his phone, or worse, that whoever's responsible for his disappearance still had his phone. We'll never know because the phone went dead again after that night and never pinged another tower. So what happened to Brian Shaffer? Let's walk through the theories because there are several and none of them make complete sense. Theory number 1, voluntary disappearance. Some people believe Brian, overwhelmed by grief over his mother's grave and stress from medical school, decided to just walk away from his life, start over somewhere new. Supporters of this theory point to the fact that Brian dreamed of living on a tropical island. Maybe he just snapped. Maybe he decided to make that dream a reality. But here's the problem with this theory. Brian was hours away from leaving for Miami with the woman he loved. He had plane tickets. He was excited about the trip. Why would he disappear the night before? It makes no sense. Also, Brian was close with his family. He'd just lost his mother. His father and brother were grieving with him. Would he really abandon them during the worst time of their lives? His girlfriend, Alexis, has repeatedly said that she doesn't believe Brian would do that. She knew him better than anyone, and she's convinced he didn't leave voluntarily. Plus, if Brian planned to disappear, why make it so mysterious? Why disappear from a crowded bar with security cameras? Why not just pack a bag, drive somewhere, and start over? The logistics don't match the theory. Theory number 2, self-harm. Some investigators have wondered if Brian, depressed over his mother's death, decided to end his own life that night. His father, Randy, even considered this possibility. After consulting with a psychic who told him Brian's body was in water near a bridge, Randy spent months searching the Olentangy River, which flows through Columbus near the OSU campus. Randy and Derek would put on waders and search along the shores, looking near bridge pilings, hoping to find closure, but they never found anything. And again, this theory has major problems. If Brian wanted to end his own life, why did he spend his last day taking final exams? Why did he make plans for Miami? Why did he call his girlfriend and say I love you hours before supposedly taking his own life? And most importantly, if this is what happened, where is his body? Columbus police have searched extensively, the river, the surrounding areas. Nothing has ever been found. After 18 years, you would think something would have turned up. A bone, a piece of clothing, something. But there has been absolutely nothing, not a single trace. Theory number 3, foul play inside the Ugly Tuna Saloona. This is where things get really dark. Some people believe something happened to Brian inside the Ugly Tuna Saloona that night. Maybe he got into an altercation with someone, maybe someone harmed him and his body was hidden inside the building or removed in a way that avoided the cameras, perhaps through that service elevator or construction area. After all, if Brian never left through the front entrance, and police are certain he didn't, then logically, either he's still in that building or he left through a route that didn't involve the public exit. Police thoroughly searched the entire building, including areas that were later demolished during renovations. No evidence was found, no remains, nothing.
But supporters of this theory point out that if someone wanted to hide something, they could have. That construction zone had multiple ways to move things without being seen. And remember, one of the businesses across the street had a camera on the ground floor exit. But was it recording continuously? Were there gaps? Could someone have timed an exit during a blind spot? Police say no, but some people remain skeptical. Theory number 4. Clint knows what happened. This is the theory that Brian's own family seems to believe, at least to some degree. Derek Shaffer has stated publicly that he thinks if Brian left voluntarily, Clint would know about it. Tom Waggoner, Alexis's father, believed the answer to the case goes through Clint Florence. And the fact that Clint lawyered up immediately, refused a polygraph, admitted to having an argument with Brian, and then cut off all communication with Brian's family, well, it raises questions. What is Clint protecting? Some people have speculated that maybe Clint was involved in something that night that he doesn't want to admit. Not necessarily something sinister, but maybe something that could get him in trouble. Drug use has been mentioned as a possibility. Maybe Clint was using substances that night and didn't want to take a polygraph for fear it would come up and ruin his career. That's been suggested by some people close to the case. But here's the problem. If Clint knows something innocent, something that wouldn't implicate him in Brian's disappearance, why not just tell police? Even anonymously, even through his lawyer. Why maintain absolute silence for 18 years? Unless he's protecting himself from something more serious than drug use, or unless he's protecting someone else. We simply don't know, and Clint isn't talking. There's one more theory that's been discussed, though it's more speculative. It's called the smiley face killer theory. Back in the mid-2000s, a group of investigators proposed that a serial killer, or possibly a group of killers, were targeting college-aged men across the United States. These men would typically be out drinking with friends, then disappear. Their bodies would later be found in bodies of water, often near graffiti of a smiley face. The theory is highly controversial, and most law enforcement agencies don't take it seriously. But Brian Shaffer fits the profile. Young, white, college-educated, athletic, out drinking with friends. Some people have wondered if Brian left the bar, perhaps through that construction exit, and was abducted. The Olentangy River is nearby. Could his body be there, undiscovered? Police briefly looked into this angle, but found no evidence to support it. Still, it's a theory that occasionally resurfaces online. So here we are, over 18 years later, and we still have no answers. The case received national media attention. In 2006, Pearl Jam's lead singer Eddie Vedder, knowing Brian was a huge fan, actually stopped his concert in Cincinnati and asked the audience if anyone had information about Brian's disappearance. Nothing useful came from it. Over the years, there have been potential sightings. Someone thought they saw Brian in Michigan. Another person reported seeing someone who looked like him in Texas. There was even a report from Sweden. Police investigated every single tip. None of them panned out. In 2020, a possible sighting in Tijuana, Mexico got people's hopes up. A man who looked remarkably like Brian was photographed. The FBI investigated. It wasn't him. The case remains completely unsolved. Columbus police say they still receive at least 2 tips a month through Crime Stoppers. The case file fills 4 boxes of documents. But despite thousands of hours of investigation, despite national media coverage, despite all the theories and speculation, we are no closer to knowing what happened to Brian Shaffer than we were on April 1st, 2006. And here's the truly heartbreaking part of this story. In September 2008, 2.5 years after Brian disappeared, his father, Randy, was outside his home in Baltimore, Ohio, cleaning up debris after a windstorm. A tree branch broke off and struck Randy in the neck. He died instantly. Randy Shaffer spent the last years of his life searching desperately for his son, never giving up hope, and he died without ever knowing what happened to Brian. When Randy's obituary was posted online, something strange occurred. Someone using Brian's name posted a message in the condolence book. It read, "To Dad, love Brian, Virgin Islands." Was it really Brian? Did he somehow learn of his father's death and reach out? Or was it a cruel hoax, someone pretending to be Brian? The IP address was traced, but police never publicly revealed what they found. Randy's obituary included a photograph of Brian with the words, "Brian, we love you, we miss you, we will never stop searching." Randy died not knowing if his son was dead or alive, and not breaks my heart. Today, Brian's younger brother Derek is still searching for answers. He still wears a missing person bracelet with Brian's name on it. Alexis Wagoner eventually moved on with her life. She finished medical school, became a doctor, got married, and started a family. But in interviews, she's made it clear she never forgot Brian. She still wonders what happens that night. She still wishes she knew the truth. The 2 women Brian was talking to at 1:55 a.m., the last people to see him on camera, were eventually identified. In a 2009 interview, they revealed something surprising. Police never asked them to take a polygraph test. Why not? These were literally the last people to speak with Brian before he vanished, and police didn't polygraph them? It's a strange oversight in an otherwise thorough investigation. What did they talk to with Brian that night? Did Brian mention anything unusual? Did he seem upset, distressed, or different in any way? We don't really know because these women were never fully pressed for details in a public way. The Ugly Tuna Saloona continued operating for several years after Brian's disappearance, but it eventually closed down. The building still stands on High Street in Columbus, but the bar is gone. And somewhere, somehow, Brian Shaffer's story ended that night. We just don't know how. If you're watching this video and you were at the Ugly Tuna Saloona on the night of March 31st, 2006, or the early morning of April 1st, 2006, if you saw anything unusual, if you remember anything at all, Brian's family is still waiting for answers. The Columbus Police Department is still investigating. If you know something, anything, please say something. Brian Shaffer's case is one of the most baffling disappearances in modern American history. A man walked into a bar, surrounded by people, covered by security cameras, and simply vanished. No body, no evidence, no answers. Just a grieving family and a mystery that has haunted investigators for nearly 2 decades. If you found this case as disturbing and fascinating as I did, please hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into dark mysteries that deserve to be remembered. And leave a comment telling me what you think happened to Brian Shaffer. Do you believe he disappeared voluntarily? Do you think something happened inside that bar? Do you think Clint Florence knows more than he's saying?
I read every comment and I want to hear your theories, because somewhere out there the truth is waiting to be found. Someone knows what happened to Brian Shaffer, and until that person comes forward, this case will remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our time. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and I'll see you in the next video.